you need to listen to me right now.
I can't do this.
We don't have a choice.
The terminal was loud with motion, but silent with tension. Rolling suitcases clicked against marble floors. Flight announcements echoed overhead, and people slowed their steps as a raised voice cut through the noise. An airline manager stood, rigid near the entrance of a private terminal, his face flushed with authority and irritation. In front of him stood a black woman in an elegant coat, calm, composed, her boarding pass resting loosely in her hand. He was yelling now loud enough for strangers to turn, loud enough for cameras to come out. He accused her of being in the wrong place, of trying to access something she clearly didn't belong to. He spoke with certainty, with confidence, with the kind of power that assumes it cannot be questioned. She didn't interrupt him. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't explain herself. She simply stood there listening while the crowd quietly decided who they believed deserved to be there. What no one knew, what not even the manager could imagine, was that the woman he was humiliating in front of everyone wasn't lost, wasn't confused, and wasn't powerless. She owned the private terminal he was standing in. And in just a few minutes, everything he thought he knew about control, respect, and authority was about to collapse. Stories like this don't start with shouting. They start with assumptions. With the unspoken rules people create about who looks important, who looks successful, and who deserves respect. Airports are places where status is visible. First-class lines, private lounges, priority boarding. They quietly divide people into categories before a single word is spoken. For some, those divisions are enforced aggressively, without question. This story isn't just about an airline manager losing his temper or a passenger being treated unfairly. It's about what happens when power is built on prejudice instead of understanding. It's about the quiet strength it takes to remain calm when the world expects you to shrink. And it's about how dignity, when held firmly enough, can expose the truth faster than anger ever could. The woman at the center of this story had learned, long ago, that shouting back rarely changes minds. She had spent years walking into rooms where people underestimated her, questioned her presence, or assumed she needed permission to exist there. Each time, she had a choice to react or to observe, to fight noise with noise, or to let silence speak. On this day, in this terminal, she chose silence not because she was weak, but because she was strong enough to wait. Strong enough to let the truth arrive on its own. The manager, unaware of who she really was, mistook her calm for compliance. He mistook her patience for fear. Like many before him, he believed authority came from the uniform he wore, not from the integrity he was supposed to represent. As the tension grew and security began to approach, the crowd leaned in, sensing that this was no longer just an argument, it was a moment. A moment that would reveal something uncomfortable about how quickly respect can be withdrawn, and how rarely it is given freely. This is a story about restraint in the face of disrespect, about grace under pressure, about how the loudest person in the room is often the least prepared for the truth. And most importantly, it's a reminder that you never really know who you're standing in front of until it's too late to take your words back. The private terminal shimmered with polished glass and quiet luxury, a place designed to move important people quickly and discreetly. When the woman stepped through the entrance, nothing about her suggested she was out of place. Her posture was confident, her walk unhurried. But the airline manager noticed her immediately. His eyes narrowed, not because of any rule she had broken, but because of an assumption he made in seconds. He approached her sharply, asking for credentials in a tone already edged with irritation. She handed over her boarding pass without hesitation, barely glanced at it before dismissing it as invalid. His voice rose, echoing through the terminal. Drawing attention, people slowed down, curious. She calmly asked what the issue was. He replied loudly that this terminal was for authorized passengers only, and suggested she had wandered into the wrong place. She listened without interrupting. Her calm seemed to anger him more. To him, her silence looked like guilt. To the crowd, it looked like uncertainty. But beneath her stillness was patience, and beneath that patience was certainty. She knew exactly where she was. The manager's frustration escalated as she refused to match his tone. He accused her of delaying operations, of disrespecting staff, of ignoring instructions. Each accusation grew harsher, more personal. He gestured broadly, making sure everyone could see he was in control. She asked if they could speak privately. He refused, saying there was nothing to discuss. His words carried a sharp edge now, the kind that humiliates rather than resolves. A few passengers exchanged uncomfortable glances, but no one intervened. This wasn't the first time they'd seen something like this. An experience had taught them silence was safer. The woman took a slow breath. She had been in rooms like this before, rooms where her presence was questioned before her name was known. She had learned that anger would only confirm the assumptions being made about her. So she stood still, hands relaxed at her sides, eyes steady. The manager mistook her composure for surrender. He signaled to security, confident he was about to restore order. He had no idea he was standing at the edge of his own undoing. As security approached, memories surfaced in the woman's mind, earlier days when doors were closed before she reached them, when her qualifications were doubted, when her success was questioned simply because it didn't match expectations. She remembered being young in an industry that didn't look like her, learning to work twice as hard to be taken half as seriously. Every setback had taught her something. Every dismissal had sharpened her resolve. She didn't raise her voice. Now, because she didn't need to. Power, she had learned, wasn't about volume. It was about timing. The manager continued speaking, now addressing the security team, framing her as a problem to be removed. She waited until he finished. Calmly, she asked for one phone call. He scoffed, but allowed it, convinced it would change nothing. She stepped slightly aside, dialed a number, and spoke softly. Just a few words, no explanations, no urgency. When she ended the call, she returned to her spot. The terminal felt different, now quieter, charged. The manager smirked, certain he had one. The crowd waited, sensing that something was about to shift. Minutes later, footsteps echoed from the far end of the terminal. Senior executives entered, their presence unmistakable. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. The manager turned, confused, then stiffened as he recognized them. Relief flickered across his face. Reinforcements, he thought. But their attention wasn't on him. They walked directly to the woman. One of them greeted her by name, extending a hand with visible respect. The terminal froze. The manager's smile faltered. Confusion spread across his face as introductions followed, titles, affiliations, ownership. Each word landed like a weight. The woman finally spoke, her voice steady, clear, impossible to ignore. She explained that she wasn't a passenger trying to gain access. She was the owner of the private terminal, there for a routine inspection. Silence swallowed the space. The manager's face drained of color. The power dynamic reversed instantly. Not through shouting, but through truth. She didn't gloat. She didn't raise her voice. She simply stood there, letting reality speak for itself. The crowd watched as authority collapsed under its own assumptions. The manager stammered, attempting an apology that arrived far too late. His words were tangled, defensive, hollow. She listened the same way she had listened earlier, calmly, without interruption. When he finished, she responded not with anger, but with clarity. She explained that the issue wasn't just his behavior toward her, but the ease with which he felt entitled to treat someone as lesser. She spoke about responsibility, about leadership, about the cost of unchecked bias. Her words weren't sharp, but they cut deeper than anger ever could. The executives listened closely. Decisions were made quietly. The manager was escorted away, not in disgrace, but in consequence. She requested that the focus not be on punishment alone, but on change training, accountability, systems that protect dignity rather than threaten it. Her authority was unquestionable, but her approach was humane. The crowd dispersed slowly. Many shaken, some inspired, all aware they had witnessed something rare later. As she walked toward her plane, the terminal felt lighter. People looked at her differently now, not because she demanded it, but because they understood. A flight attendant thanked her quietly. A passenger nodded with respect. She acknowledged them politely, unchanged by the revelation that had stunned everyone else. For her, This wasn't about proving status. It was about correcting a moment that reflected a larger problem. She boarded the plane without ceremony, settling into her seat as the door closed behind her. Outside the terminal, returned to its rhythm, but something had shifted beneath the surface. The incident would be discussed, analyzed, remembered not because of the yelling, but because of the restraint that followed it. In the days that followed, changes were implemented. Policies were revised, training sessions were scheduled, conversations were had that should have happened long before. The story spread, not as gossip, but as a lesson. People talked about how quickly assumptions can become weapons, and how quietly dignity can dismantle them. The woman continued her work, knowing moments like this weren't isolated. They were opportunities. Opportunities to reshape spaces that too often relied on appearance rather than principle. She didn't see herself as a hero. She saw herself as someone who refused to let silence be mistaken for weakness, someone who understood that real authority doesn't need to announce itself. This story isn't about humiliation or revenge. It's about awareness. It's about the unseen weight people carry when they walk into places that weren't designed with them in mind. It's about the power of staying composed when everything around you demands reaction. It's about remembering that respect should never have prerequisites. The next time you see someone being questioned, doubted, or dismissed, remember this moment. Remember that you never truly know who someone is or what they've built till you choose to see them as human first. Sometimes the most powerful moments don't end with applause or raised voices. They end quietly, with understanding settling in where ignorance once lived. What happened in that terminal wasn't just a confrontation between two people. It was a mirror held up to a system that too often confuses authority with superiority and confidence with correctness. The manager believed control came from his position. The woman proved that true power comes from character. She didn't win because she owned the building. She won because she refused to let disrespect turn her into someone she wasn't. This story reminds us how quickly assumptions can turn into humiliation, and how easily dignity can be stripped away when respect is conditional. It challenges us to think about how we treat people before we know their titles, their income, or their influence. Because respect shouldn't be something people earn after proving their worth. It should be the starting point.
Every person
We encounter is carrying a story we can't see, a history we didn't witness, and a strength we might underestimate. The woman walked away without revenge, without cruelty, without needing to raise her voice. In doing so, she changed more than one situation. She changed a mindset, and that's the kind of impact that lasts. So the next time you're in a position of power, remember this: how you treat people when you think they can do nothing for you says everything about who you are. And the next time you're underestimated, remember this too: silence, patience, and self-respect can be louder than any shout.